before we continue, I'm really curious. Can we just have a show of hands? How many people here think that it's more likely than not that there will be a referendum on the people's vote? Is that going to happen? Okay, and if we, hands down, those who think that it's more likely that it's not going to happen. Okay, so I'd say that's about maybe a quarter of the audience is pretty pessimistic on that. Which leads into a question that Rosemary Morlin, who may be here tonight, may not, yep, over there, sent in, asking if maybe we should be campaigning to just have Parliament decide that we should stay in the EU instead of for a second referendum, on the basis that referenda undermine the sovereignty of Parliament. Now, I mean, my personal thought on that is that technically, yes, but in the situation that we're in now, that's going to cause more trouble than otherwise. But let's pass that to Leila.
It's tempting, isn't it? And now that it looks very likely that we would, we've had the indication that the court is going to rule on Monday that we can unilaterally take back Article 50. That temptation looks more and more real if it was something we wanted. The problem we have is that no party campaigned at the last general election with that as their policy. And so I think there is a very legitimate argument that there isn't a mandate for that in Parliament. So I think, and I stand by that, I think it started with the people and it needs to end with the people. And if we have any chance of having even some of those people who voted Leave feel that Parliament isn't something out there and doesn't listen to them, if we as Parliament then decided to rescind Article 50 without that democratic mandate, I think that would make the divisions in society genuinely so much worse. So I think we have to go down this route because of the way you look across the spectrum. There was, as far as I'm aware, no party that campaigned to unilaterally rescind Article 50. What the Liberal Democrat position is that if Parliament got to the point of no deal, then we would campaign, and we have party policy that says that we would rescind Article 50 in those specific circumstances. What was interesting about Grieve's amendment, when was it? Still this week, wasn't it? It feels like last month, a few days ago, is that meaningful vote that comes after the 21 days now basically means that Parliament has the control to say no deal. That was actually the really important thing that happened this week. The only thing that exists as a majority in Parliament is that no one wants no deal, except for some, complete nutters who put themselves before the country, and particularly the country's economics. So I'm sorry, I'd love to do it, and wouldn't it be nice, and then we could just all move on, but I really think it's not really feasible.
Thank you.
I hate referendums. So did Thatcher and so did Attlee. They hated them or disliked them because they felt they were the tools of demagogues and dictators, and they were right. Because anyone can ask a populist question and get a one-word answer and then interpret the answer however they wanted, which is what Hitler and Mussolini did, and some would argue it's what Theresa May has been doing. She's been second-guessing what Leave means. Leave means what? None of us really know. And so I can understand that Parliament feels stymied by the referendum result, even though 70% or thereabouts of Parliament would have voted for Remain, given a free vote on this. They feel they have got their hands tied by an advisory referendum. So it's possible that we can only get out of this mess by another referendum, and then I hope we don't have any more. But there is another way. I mean, Labour would hold the key to stopping this if we had a general election and they had a manifesto promise, maybe with the Lib Dems, to put an end to this. If they won on a general election to reverse Brexit, it would save us all the trouble of a referendum. It would be legally binding, and it would put us in a much better position. So that's what I would go for. Unfortunately, Labour haven't done that yet, but I do feel Labour and the Lib Dems, maybe together, have the key to the end of this mess.
Okay, there was a gentleman who had a question for Leila.
gone.
He's gone? No.
Phew.
In that case, I'll pitch one. The mechanism that you described by which we actually get to the point... Okay. The mechanism by which... It's really weird, I'm towering over you.
That's all right.
The mechanism that you described for us to get to a people's vote involved lots of maybes and squeaky bum time at the end there. Because effectively the government has to be the people that propose it.
Yep.
But it all comes down to this withdrawal agreement being voted down.
Yep.
What happens if it's not?
Well, because of, oh gosh, this is really geeky now, right? So the procedure committee, I can only do this in Oxford. There is a committee in Parliament called the Procedure Committee that decides the order that Parliament can debate things, right? So the motion that's going down to accept this deal or not that we're debating at the moment, they have decided can be pre-amended, okay? So if it looks likely by next Tuesday, and you can put down amendments at any point until that final day, so if it looks somehow likely, and as I say, I don't think there is a single parliamentarian that thinks this is going to pass, including Theresa May, otherwise she wouldn't be, I put down a parliamentary question last week that found out she's been spending £50,000 over the last few weeks in Facebook advertising to campaign to the people about her deal to encourage them to accept it, which is just ridiculous. So I don't even think she thinks it's going to pass. But it's not necessarily the case that that deal won't be changed or things might be added in advance of it. So, for example, one of the movements afoot is the Remainer Conservatives are putting forward amendments to tie us into EFTA, so single market, Norway plus or plus or whatever. My argument is that's still vassalage, that's still losing control, that's still nowhere near as the deal we've got now, and whether it's that or whether it's this deal or something else, we still need to put it to the people. So unless something like that coalesces in time for Tuesday, I could see that get commanding majority in the House, and it would require the Labour Party to come on board. And actually, what was just said about the Labour Party is pretty much right. The Labour Party is the key to all of this right now. And unless the Labour Party starts to shift its position from where it is now, then I don't see how this deal is going to go through on Tuesday. And if it does, I don't know. I don't have a hat to eat. But that's what I say, yeah.
Thank you. And this isn't one of the questions we were sent in, but it's more of an observation from while I was listening to Will speaking. Brexit, the vote was driven by centralisation of power in Westminster and by deprivation, which has been exacerbated by austerity. Centralisation of power is rather a Tory obsession, as is austerity. So the question is that, given that the things that made Brexit happen are a direct result of Tory policy, and yet the only party currently able to make a people's vote happen or to stop Brexit is the Tory party because they're in government, how do we square the circle of having to have the party admit that they were wrong, which effectively cancelling Brexit would be or even questioning Brexit is a tacit admission of?
Gosh. One of the extraordinary things we're witnessing, amongst many extraordinary things, is the potential implosion of not just the Conservative Party, but potentially the Labour Party. The differences between Joe Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg are absolutely visceral. Rees-Mogg, a number of senior Conservatives have said to me that they think the divisions in their party are irretrievable. Others tell you that the instinct of the tribe to hang together is such that they will hang together. But I do think this is, and Rees Mogg has said this, that it is an 1846 moment. The passing of the Corn Laws broke the Tory party for the best part of kind of 2 generations in the second half of the 19th century. And I think that this is, in a sense, they're kind of reaping the whirlwind, because you're right. In Blackpool, I think I mentioned it, social spending between 2010 and 2016 fell by £914 per head. I mean, there's no doubt that in Blackpool, that austerity was fanned the flames of the Brexit vote. And that is one of the reasons why I think that Layla's right. Whether it's Michael Gove, whether it's Sajid Javid, whether it's Philip Hammond, whether it's Theresa May herself, they're all public on the record as saying they're against a people's vote. And the reason why they're against a people's vote is what lies behind that question. It will split the Conservative Party. There is no, and one reason why you can't have a general election, although I think she's much more minded to call one than people reckon, is that what would be in the manifesto on Europe? Would it be her deal? Mm-hmm. Would it be a hard Brexit? Would it be a people's vote? And John Redwood and Bernard Jenkin can't fight a general election campaign on a manifesto that includes any people's vote or any commitment to back the deal. So there can't be a general election which actually the Tory party sticks together. It's one of these moments in British politics, and it happens all around the world, where actually your political system actually, and in a first past the post system, it is absolutely lethal, because how do you command a majority how can you get to the 35 or 40% in a constituency if your party is split? You can't. That opens up prospects for the Liberal Democrats, obviously. It opens up prospects for a potential new party. My understanding, and I'd love to hear Layla talk to this, is that there are as many as 40 MPs, about a dozen Tories and up to 30 Labour, who have indicated that if the turmoil becomes really mayhem-like in the months ahead, they will form such a party. And I understand from senior Liberal Democrats that you've pre-agreed that you will stand down for these MPs if there is a general election. Anyway,
above my pay grade.
You hold the seat, but I mean that's what I understand is going on. I mean, you've been anyway. Meanwhile, on the Labour side, Corbyn and McCluskey are against a people's vote. So are the kitchen cabinet round Corbyn. However, the bulk of the shadow cabinet, the bulk of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and actually a huge majority of Labour Party members in the country, and actually a majority in Momentum, all want there to be a people's vote. And Corbyn is moving kind of crab-like towards that position. Again, my understanding is, and this is not telling you anything you don't know, is that after Tuesday, the leadership is going to come out in favour of people's vote.
Woo!
That is my understanding. And they would be prepared. I think I mean, Layla must again tell us whether this kind of is fanciful, but I could imagine a situation in which Labour formed a minority government, supported kind of supply confidence basis by 30 or 40 Tory MPs on the strict understanding that it would take the bill for a people's vote through the House of Commons, do the arrangements with the European Union that have to be done, and that after people's vote there would be a general election and a new government would be formed. Now that is not, that is emerging as my central expectation of how politics will work out in the months ahead, that the price for 6 months in power for Jeremy Corbyn as our Prime Minister will be a commitment to have a people's vote. Ha ha!
Wow. Can I actually take it?
Stand up.
To the central part of my understanding is that... Sorry?
Well,
yeah, I just want to answer the specific points that Will asked about of me. So of the central party, I understand that people are essentially holding fire. And actually there is a loose coalition of MPs who are already working together quite closely that include the Remainer Conservatives, us, Caroline Lucas of course, and then a growing number of Labour MPs who are increasingly frustrated with the position of the party. I like Will's idea. I think I'd probably be up for that. Just because we need to find some kind of mechanism to get this through. It is predicated, of course, on the government losing a vote of no confidence, and so that coalition needs to exist before, not after that vote of no confidence. And all I can say is I don't think we're quite there yet, so I don't think that's going to happen next week, but that may be something that we consider for the future.
okay, I know there's some questions from the floor. Thank you. We've got a gentleman there and a lady there. Now, I don't know if we've got a roving mic that works. We do. Excellent. We've got it working now. So...
Am I audible? Yes. This question started and has been partially answered. It said, what really bothers me is to find out by what route the members of Parliament Civil will actually get a vote onto the floor of the House of Commons. It's been partially answered. Above the proposes that we should have a final say in people's vote on Tuesday. I was told that the only way is a vote introduced by a sitting government. So I'm really asking you a question about technicality. Is that really the only way? Could it be done by amendment? Will it be done by amendment? And I know that a bill has been prepared. Can you tell us anything about this rocket that is might be fired? And there is a bill by Gerald Davies, which is a private member's bill, which, as I watched it, was going to come up on November 27th for some kind of consideration. Is undoubtedly being put off, but it's a complete proposal to have a people's vote, and it's presumably ready. It could be voted on. So my question is, what are the ammunition, and when we need to know what the ammunition is so we can talk.
Okay, so really quickly, the procedure that you described before, where the government has to lay the people's vote, that's the only way, is that correct?
Am I right? I believe the answer is yes, but can I just expand slightly? You'll have noticed the reason why all political parties are moving towards this is because of the will of the people, as showing up in poll after poll after poll that is showing there is now a majority for a people's vote in this country. And so whilst I know this feels very much like squeaky bum time, we need to wait, the fact is when there is a political will, Parliament will find a way. That is the message today. So this is about campaigning and what you guys can do to make it happen. We need to increase that political will. Don't feel powerless. And I don't think talking about different bits of legislation and how they might be entered into in the House with people out there is going to get them to come round to the idea of a referendum. However, talking about all the things we've spoken about today, why the EU was a good thing, what a mess this government is in, how you were lied to during the Leave campaign, and all those promises that you were made cannot be kept, and actually the only way out of this mess is by putting it back to the people. That's how we get the people's vote, because when that becomes overwhelming, there is no government that can ignore the will of the people.
Thank you. Next question is the gentleman back there.
Thank you. Let me make my position clear. I'm a passionate European. I grew up in the Netherlands. I have family over there. My brother had to take out Dutch nationality because of Brexit. I also believe that a people's vote is the least bad option currently under discussion. I don't think many of us need persuading on that. But it is still a bad option. There are for two reasons, and there is an alternative. So, firstly, it's a bad option because there is a very high chance that we will not get a Remain result. It may well be that Theresa May has got a white rabbit in her hat. That could well be a people's vote with the three options that she has outlined on the ballot paper, under single transferable vote. In that case, there is a high probability that all the Leavers and all the Remainers will not get, neither will get the majority, but all their second preferences will go to the May deal, and she will be victorious. That is a real possibility. The other reason why people's vote is a bad idea is, whatever nice words some of you say, it will lead to further division. It will invigorate the far right. The people full of rhetoric, the Boris Johnsons and so on, and the Leave campaigners, they will love it, whether they win or not. And the EDLs of this world and the UKIPs of this world, they will love it. There is an alternative. We can learn from Ireland, where they had a referendum on the emotive issue of abortion. But what people don't know is that they had a citizens' assembly first, which was selected at random to represent the demographics of the whole country. And I'm sorry to say, not the demographics of a meeting like this. It would have lots of young people in it that actually represent the country's demographic. That is what we should be campaigning for first, and then a people's vote on whatever it recommends, as they did in Ireland on abortion.
Yeah.
So, what's the question? Could we get the microphone over to the lady just here, please?
Thank you very much. I just want to follow up the question before the last one. So it seems to me, from what you've all said, a general election solves no problems at the moment, right now. What we need to happen is for Article 50 to be postponed. There needs to be a people's vote with two choices, one to accept Theresa May's deal and the other to remain in Europe. And the mechanism by which that can come about, I wonder if it might be a private member's bill with the crucial issue of cross-party support. Don't waste your time forming a new party. Just get cross-party support.
Could you pass the microphone forward, please? Just to Ruby there, please. Over there, that's it.
Okay, so kind of relatedly to issues around the referendum. So if we do get a referendum, as we know, the three groups that perhaps are most adversely affected by the result of the referendum. So EU27 citizens here, Brits living long term abroad, and 16 to 17-year-olds were denied a vote. So there's a three-pronged question here. The first is, do you think either or all of these groups should be enfranchised, should we have a referendum? Secondly, do you think there's any chance of getting it through Parliament? And thirdly, if it isn't possible to enfranchise those groups, how can you mobilise them to campaign for us to remain when they will be again excluded?
Thank you. Well, I'll take those questions. I know there are some hands up at the back. I will come, if we get the microphone towards the back, we'll get some questions from the back after we've had answers to these, please. So, everyone like to go first here?
Oh, he's gone. I'm happy to.
Yeah, go for it.
But do you want to? I mean, I've spoken a lot.
Would you like to fill any of those points?
Well, I am not so confident that we're going to get a people's vote. But as I said earlier, regardless of whether we get a people's vote or not, we still have to be campaigning for the right messages for what we're trying to promote. And I don't think there's enough effort on that just yet. So either, if we get a people's vote, we need to be prepared for it. I don't think we are. There is a chance that either Remain wouldn't win, because remember, I think that all the lies of Leave have not yet been demolished. They should have been crushed by now. That's their oxygen. We take away their oxygen, they haven't got an argument. We should have been spending, and we still can spend, some time and money and resources demolishing the lies of Leave. We've got to do that anyway. The sooner, the better. So if we take in mind that we don't yet know the route back to the EU, which is what I guess most of the people in this room desire, we've still got to be campaigning as if we were campaigning for a new referendum, or we were campaigning to rejoin. This might be a long-term thing. You know, as I said before, awareness-raising campaigns take time. And I think there needs to be an awareness-raising campaign about the EU for at least the next decade, regardless. If we remain in the EU, by some chance we remain, we would still need an awareness-raising campaign for the next decade to actually make sure that Brexit doesn't raise its head again. And if we leave the EU, we will still need an awareness-raising campaign for the next decade to actually have any hope of rejoining and staying in. So that's my view on it. I don't know the political mechanism that we will get another vote. All I know is that we should be working now as if we were campaigning for another referendum.
Yeah, look, just very quickly, because I'm hoping that we can get lots of questions and just hear points of view. But I want to make 2 points very quickly. The first point is let's dismiss emphatically that a people's vote will be divisive. If there's a people's vote and we lose it, we'll all have to accept that we're leaving the European Union. We'll carry on making the argument, of course, but we'll recognise that for years ahead we couldn't persuade our fellow citizens for whatever reason. If we win it, I think it becomes, certainly on a reform and remain ticket, I think it becomes a mechanism for actually bringing Britain together. The idea that the people in this room and millions like us should be terrorised with our knees knocking because we might have some protest and some civil unrest from the far right is an absolute counsel of despair. Those men, and they're largely men, exist out there, and we have to take them on. We have to win the argument. We have to get the bulk of the people behind us. And actually, if they associate themselves as they want to, Tommy Robinson wants to make himself the leader of the Leave campaign. Bring that on. The bulk of the Brits will never vote for him. I can't bear it when people say we can't have a second vote because it's divisive, as if the opinions of all of us in this room count for nothing. Count for nothing. And one has to accept the views of a transient majority founded upon, as we know so well, so many lies, half-truths, bending of information, campaign misspending, and all the rest of it. And in a democracy, the point about a democracy is we argue and we argue and we deliberate and we elect governments and we throw them out. We have referenda, we reconsider them, we have a second referenda. We don't regard one referendum at one moment in time as the people speaking forever. What's that? What's that? And I'm afraid that to get a people's vote, we have to have a government committed to it. And there's only two routes to that. One is a general election in the next 6 or 8 weeks, in which, frankly, the Conservative Party fight on her deal, and the Labour Party fight on a people's vote. And the Labour will win that, and then they can have will have a people's vote. Or the other option I put on the table, it would be great to be able to have a private member's bill taking it through the cross-party support, but you just can't, a private member can't authorise the government of the day, the executive, to do all the many things that have to be done to put a people's vote in place. The money, the ballot boxes, the electoral rolls, and the electoral commission, what the question is going to be, that requires a government of the day to take it through. And there's only two routes to that, a general election or a minority administration propped up by cross-party support with the sole objective of getting us a people's vote by May or June of this year. That's what I think.
Thank you, Will. To the Citizens' Assembly point, I've been attracted to a Citizens' Assembly idea for a very long time. Not for this, though. I think it's a really good model of democracy. I thought it was really inspirational. My problem with it setting it up in time in order to do what it needs to do, to then still have 22 weeks in order to, you see what I mean? I just don't think that there is enough appetite for it yet. It's an idea that was sort of raised, I think Stella Creasy raised it at Any Questions when she was at Somerville the other day. It's sort of the last few weeks. But in order for it to take hold and be enacted and done by the end of March is my concern. It's a great model and I think we should do it anyway. And actually I'd like to see a complete reform of the way we do private members' bills in Parliament and include a Citizens' Assembly to feed into that, because that would be really interesting. But anyway, what's on the ballot? The wonderful Peter Kellner, get his emails, and if you don't, you should find them. He sends them out. 7 different options for what could possibly be on that ballot paper. I think it has to be a binary choice, says someone who loves STV. But the problem with a referendum is that it does become messy, and then you get these bizarre voting patterns where someone might vote for May's deal just so that they can avoid no deal, for example. And I think there would be a lot of people in the country who would be tempted just in case that came out as one of the options. What I will say, though, is that I think, personally, it's irresponsible for Parliament to put no deal to the country at all.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's my view. And I worry when people like Tony Blair are standing up saying, you know, yes, this deal's pointless and painful and whatever, and we should have no deal versus Remain. And whilst if you look at polls, and they are, you know, I know they're only ever indicative, theoretically, when you poll no deal versus Remain, there is a bigger difference than if you poll May's deal, even as unpopular it is against Remain. So the tactical argument is that we do want no deal versus Remain, because as the polls indicate at the moment, that's our biggest chance of actually getting Remain. However, I am concerned that a poll now, or even in a few weeks now, may well get turned on its head, as several have done over previous years. The impossible has happened over and over again in politics. I'm seriously concerned that we cannot accept no deal for this country under any circumstances. And so I think we have to keep campaigning for whatever deal we've got, whether it's May's deal, whether it's Norway +++, whether it's whatever it is, but it needs to go back to the people, and Remain has to be on the ballot paper.
I'm sorry? Oh, yes, that's a good point. The franchise.
Franchise question. Yes, I would love all those people to be included. I very much doubt they will, unfortunately. Sorry.
Thank you. Right, so we can take maybe 3 or 4 questions from the back. So we can take that one, and then after that, we can get the microphone over onto this side, please.
So I have 3 points. If we have general election for people's vote, can we please stop the nasty rhetoric about EU citizens and insist that the end of freedom of movement for once and for all will be more dramatic for British people, because 508 million EU citizens will have other 27 countries and 3 EEA countries to live in happily, but 66 million of British citizens will have no other country to live in.
I didn't hear what you said.
Movement, we need to make the case.
The government used to use EU citizens as bargaining chip into EU negotiations, and today it uses EU citizens as bargaining chips to negotiate the deal with MPs, and that is disgraceful. And if there's a people's vote, please do not put no deal scenario into the ballot, because it will be dramatic for EU citizens. And please do give us a vote, because no taxation without representation.
I'll just say to the people up in the gallery, I don't think we have a way of getting the microphone up to you. What we'll do is we'll take some questions from the floor, and then we'll get the microphone upstairs to you after this round.
There's another reason that we need a people's vote, and that's because Parliament has no mandate for this decision. In 2016, the government wrote to every household saying that the government would implement what the people decide. They gave us a referendum choice between A and B before they worked out what B is. That wasn't the fault of the people, but that promise has not yet been kept. We need to have the referendum we were promised. But now they've worked out what A and B are, we need the referendum to decide this matter.
Can we have another one from here? There's a lady with a sort of brownish coat on. Here, there was someone in the middle there with, a gentleman in a red jumper. Hand up, please. There we go.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about the need to convince Leave voters that to support. That's been the question, but I actually have a question. What it's a question to each of the panelists. What would be your key message to convince Leave voters that remaining in the EU is in their best interest? Simple question.
Thank you. So we'll take those questions now. Can we get the microphone up to the balcony? That'd be great. Thank you. And then people on the floor, we'll bring the microphone back down again. It's not going to stay up there. So who would like to go first on that batch?
All right. I'm going to answer the last one first because actually we've done some work on this. So you're probably aware, Best for Britain, European Movement, People's Vote, Parliamentary. We are working very, very closely together, and we've got some fairly recent messaging work that was done that answers that exact question, and it goes like this-ish. What was promised to you can't be delivered, and then tweak that for the community that you're talking to. The deal that they has come back with is worse than the deal we have already with the European Union. 3, Brexit is going to go on forever under this deal because, to the other point, A and B, we still don't know what B is because of how ridiculously vague the political declaration is. So if you want to make Brexit stop, don't vote for this deal. And 4, only the people can sort out the mess that this government has made. And that four-pronged messaging points seems to sway the most number of Leave voters to then A, want a people's vote, and B, vote Remain. So if anyone wants to come later and I can write that down for you, let me know. But do talk to people about it because it shouldn't just be politicians talking about it. You guys need to be doing that on social media and your friends and family and all those people. We need to get those messages out there. Alexandrine and the 3 million, and she's a key part of that group. I just also want to thank you for the hard work that you do in communicating with that campaign and raising the profile of EU citizens. They have been used as bargaining chips. I have read the No Deal Preparations for EU Citizens document that came out this morning. It's appalling, and it's another reason why we have to make sure no deal is off that ballot paper. I just want to end by talking about this money issue. You are absolutely right. I never thought that I would feel like I'm living inside a John le Carré novel sometimes, but from the fact that the government has willfully not allowed the source of the money that went to the DUP during the referendum campaign that was subsequently spent in London. And we still don't know the source of that money, and that was the government, I think, being complicit, frankly, in corruption, because what otherwise do we have to hide? I think we need a Mueller-style investigation, more than just... I just think it's appalling. The links to Aaron Banks and the potential links to Nigel Farage and Russia, this all needs to come out. I'm seriously concerned that we aren't going to be able to reform it in time for this vote. We need to be absolutely vigilant. We need people screenshotting if they see anything that looks like it was a Facebook ad that they didn't expect to see there. And yeah, we need major reform. The Select Committee of DCMS, Damien Collins, is currently looking at this, and they are going to come back with initial recommendations. I personally don't think it's got anywhere near enough teeth. We need something that's really going to reform this from the bottom up.
According to analysis of YouGov polling in the last year or so, around 3,600 Leave voters are changing their minds every day. We are winning, and I think we can win more. And even though the mechanism in Parliament may not be very clear on how one would get another vote, I think, as is being expressed here, Parliament and parliamentarians, they would listen if the people really were pushing hard for another opportunity. So it goes back to my original point that we still need to be campaigning. The other thing is that there is a potential. I don't put it very high, but it at least could happen. A High Court is considering serious allegations about how the referendum was conducted, and the High Court does have the power to annul this. So that might be something.
Well,
Yeah.
advisory to begin with.
Look, I'll be very quick because I know there's lots of hands up. I mean, I think my messaging would be something very simple. I think it would be for our kids, and I would like to play around with let's put the roar back in the lion. But it has to be simple. It has to speak to kind of people's identities and passions. Interesting that messaging is. I don't think it pulls that one off. I agree. I mean, I think that it was unbelievable actually. The 6 months that followed the referendum, that where Mr. Farage took over the Tory party essentially. And her red lines were his red lines, and that's why we've got to where we've got to. Interestingly, he's now resigned from UKIP. Mm-hmm. I expect to hear that Mr. Farage is about to join the Tory party and stand as a Tory MP. That would be fabulous as well, I think, for us. So, I mean, the way that EU citizens were used in that way, and actually, Oxford University and actually my college. We are going to pay for the applications of EU citizens for British citizenship. But it's unbelievable that it should cost so much. It's 60 quid a shot, it's a deterrent to kind of be a citizen, even though allegedly all the rights are being protected. Actually, I think it'd be fabulous if in the next 6 months we got lots of applications from EU kind of nationals to be UK citizens, and you can vote. Wouldn't that be great? And I think I'll sit down because I want to hear more questions. I've got to go now at 10 minutes just to say it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, have we got the microphone in the balcony? Right, excellent.
Thanks very much for bringing them upstairs. I hope my questions work. My first question really is, I've got two questions if that's okay. My first is to Will really. I found your reform or Remain in Reform proposal quite inspiring, frankly. I really think that gets to the heart of what has to be done, not just to get a people's vote and to win a people's vote, but to win a people's vote decisively enough that we just put this whole issue to bed for a long time. But I think we have to recognise that we have to win the trust of the people who voted Leave, and I just wonder how we win that trust, how we make them believe there genuinely will be reform, particularly when you've got the likes of Dan Hannan describing anyone involved in Remain as a sort of self-interested part of the elite establishment. We are being divided by the rhetoric of the other side hugely, as we all know, and I think we have a lot of work to do to win the trust of Brexit voters and make them believe that we genuinely will be reformed. So my question is, how do we convince them of that? And my second question is, what do we in this room all do tomorrow and over the weekend and next week, other than just sending off our postcards to our MP. I've got a couple of suggestions. One is I think we should make in contact with the Remain campaigners in Blackpool, in Mansfield, in these other places where they're facing a much bigger battle on the high street than we are. I think we should be showing them some solidarity, offering them our support and services. I think that's the way we're going to have a much bigger impact on things doing that than standing on Paul Market, frankly. And I'd also like to suggest that the next meeting of this sort of group happens in Blackburn, Leeds, rather than here.
While the microphone is being passed forward, I'll just take a couple of those points on behalf of the group. And essentially, please come and help us. Come along to the organising groups. Cathy will be talking at the end about how to get involved. We need your help, we need your ideas, and we need it's a great idea to be reaching out outside the communities that we happen to live in. We're not at all opposed to that. Come and get involved. At the end, Cathy will be talking about how to get involved in the group, what we'll be doing, and how you can guide us. So thanks for that. Next question at the top here.
Just now we were encouraged to engage in social media. And if it's true that social media is such a powerful engine, and if it's true that most actions in social media are contained within a bubble, doesn't it behoove us all to join discussion groups that are the anathema to our point of view?
I think there was someone right at this end with their hand up. Is that the case, or anyone else? No? Okay. The mic's coming back downstairs then. So let's take those two while the microphone's in transit. The mic's coming down.
About engaging with the enemy. I actually think that the enemy, real hard, ardent Brexiters, they're not worth engaging with. Because their minds aren't going to change. All it does, it gets nasty, it gets entrenched. My view is that the vast majority of Leave voters, middle of the road, not that political, not that strong on Brexit, could have voted either way in the referendum. They're not on the forums. They're not actually campaigning either way. They're not that strongly minded about it. And it's the middle of the road, reasonable people, the average Briton, that we need to reach. And although we might be mistaken in thinking that the enemy is huge, that there are actually millions of them, I don't believe that. I just think they're very loud. And they're on the forums, and they're coming to our Facebook pages and other pages, making an awful racket. And actually, they don't represent much of Britain at all. So we have to be careful. If we waste and dissipate our energy engaging with those people, we'll have wasted the opportunity. I mean, on my Facebook page, we don't want them. We want Leave voters, but we regard ourselves as a shop. And if you come into our shop, you've got to be interested in our product. We don't allow our page for people to come in and try and take our customers away from us. So I think the trick, and also the difficulty, is to know how to reach those people who voted Leave, whose minds are more open, because they're not going to be so easy to find. They're not going to be on the ardent Brexit pages, which I think we should just avoid and let them get on with it. Thank you.
I did hear a couple of comments from my right during that, so I'll pass them straight over. Will, would you like it?
I mean,
It's probably your last.
Oh,
because I'm aware that you're running out of time. So.
Well, I mean, how long are you going to go on for? What's the plan?
We will be stopping in about 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, I'll stay. Must stay at the end. Okay. Look, I mean, thank you for saying you found Remain and Reform inspiring. How do you win the trust? And I think the answer is that you do just what you suggested. I think that going forward in the first 6 months of next year, we have to be in the places which were the kind of heartlands of the Brexit vote. I'm actually a great believer in comedy. I actually think there's some fabulous satires and anti-Brexit musicals, and I'd like to see lots and lots and lots of them being mounted in Brexit parts of Britain. I think it should be about comedy. I think it should be about music. I think it should be funky, and I think we have to say. I mean, there's no other thing you can do really, but one has to say, with as much authenticity as one can muster, that we basically get it. That actually the spatial inequalities and wealth inequalities and inequality of opportunity are just insupportable, and we've got to build. I know it's a tired phrase, but one country, and we can't go on like this, and we get it. I think your notion of holding meetings like this in Blackboard Leeds is a great idea, and I hope the next ones are. They're so difficult to find a site and all the rest of it. It's no criticism, but I mean, I think it would be great to do that. And I accept any invitation I can get to go and speak in other parts of the country where and yet let's do it. One last thing about this, and one reason for optimism. One reason for real optimism is I do think our young people are fired up like I've never come across for 50 years, really. I mean, I think our future, our choice, wonderful group of young men and women, they will muster, if and when there's a vote, they will muster, I think, not just tens of thousands, but actually hundreds of thousands of young men and women who will flood these areas, and they will beseech the over 65s to either abstain or vote for them, and that will make a lot of difference to the dynamic of the vote. Thank you.
I completely agree with Will's last point. I'd also point out, I understand that actuarially speaking, the date more or less by which the number of people who are older who might have voted leave are replaced by more young people who have now turned 18 is sometime in January. So it's not a nice thought, and it assumes that no one's moved in the middle. But the point that there are now going to be very many young people who didn't have a voice then and do now, it gives me a lot of hope. They are going to be extraordinarily important to this campaign. Look, how do we win the trust of Leave voters? I absolutely agree. We have to bring them. We have to recognise that there were a lot of people for whom this was the first time they'd ever voted, ever. And that's why turnout was so high in areas where actually they have a history of being totally neglected by particularly the main two parties, both Labour and the Conservatives. When they are entrenched in seats, don't bother putting out a single leaflet during an election. They don't bother doing any door knocking. I understand that MPs in central Manchester spent a day, maybe two, in their constituencies, and then spent the rest of the time campaigning in marginal seats. And this is geeky, but it matters. I really think that part of this needs to be reform of the voting system, because the current system actively disenfranchises people, and it's caused this problem in the first place. And not... just that, I think we also need to strengthen local government. And I don't just mean by giving them enough money to actually, deliver local services, because in the end, potholes matter. They matter because they're the thing that people can see with their own eyes as a failure of people who they'd elected, and that's why people hate them so much. But I think we need to actually now bring forth regional assemblies in England, as well as having the devolved assemblies in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and that's I really genuinely think that that's the next step that we need to take, because the issues in the north of this country are very different to the issues in our area here, and we need government that's far, far closer to the people I would have been very happy for Parliament to have moved away from London as well, but sadly that's not going to happen, so I won't have my way. And just finally, on what do you do now to campaign? The postcards to MPs help, by the way, they really do, and if you want to continue to write to me, I'm very happy to hear from you. But there is a very, very important point about going to help others in other areas. And, Wantage, for example. Mr. Vasey has been sort of... And now he's doing, he's now backing the deal, and I still don't totally understand why, because him and Victoria Prentice come up to me and go, oh, we're such ardent Remainers. Like, literally, that's what they think of themselves. And yet they haven't quite made the leap so go and campaign in Banbury, go find, if they have offices there, go and stand outside their offices and make them feel the heat, because actually I think sometimes we're just a bit too genteel with our campaigning, and I think, getting in people's faces with flags in a very respectful way, but as Sodom has done outside Parliament, I think we should sort of throw. Well, I say this having come back from Belfast, where there were offices of the Alliance Party that had bricks thrown through them. So I really don't think we should do that. But we need to make them feel like they have the potential to lose very many voters if they don't do the right thing. And frankly, I think they've been getting away with it scot-free. I think they haven't had enough heat from us yet. So go and help those communities too.
When we can hear that 11 o'clock Saturday in Wantage, there's a stall. And in Bicester? We will send out an email. So actually, this is the point. Kathy, if you can come up here, let everyone know how they can get on our mailing list and how they can help, because there's no point me shouting places at you, but we can email you exactly where things are happening and you can go and help. Go on the European Movement website and you'll find it.
Thank you. That's good. All right. So this is the last 2 minutes. As Justin said, I want to say thank you very much to John, Leila and Will for coming. And important is for everybody in this room to actually make a commitment to write to your MP, which is why we tried to make it super easy for you tonight. I know some of you are saying, I've done it, I'm there. As Leila said, she gave you, the opportunity to do it again, keep going, particularly if you're Annalise, particularly Ed Vasey, particularly Robert Courts. Just keep doing it and tell everyone you know, because one of the problems for us activists, all of us in our little t-shirts, the people that arrange everything, is we're the boring ones, we're the ones no one wants to talk to at parties, we're the ones who everyone thinks is obsessed and mad, and we get together like a little therapy group and share where nobody else cares. Why is it just us that seem to care so much? But that you've all turned out tonight, so I'm sure some of you are thinking people like me are mad because we're just devoting far too much of our life. But you can talk to people, you can talk to the soft leaders you talked about, and absolutely do not bother to argue with a hard leader, because one of them said to me, I was seeing you hung from a lamppost yesterday on Twitter. So, and you can spot them a mile off. They're generally blokes, they generally like football. I'm afraid it's very stereotyped. Argue with and debate with the women with kids. That's who to go for. That's the group that are converting fast, okay? Because they are starting to worry about their kids' future. Don't bother with the hardened old guys. They're just going to be offensive and rude. Sorry. So, the last thing I want to say before you have your anoraks on and I'm running out of the door. So, I hope you have written a postcard. We have got our post box at the end. We've also got donation buckets, because none of us do this, we're all doing it for free, and we need to, this has been tiring, the film needs paying for, etc. It's all really expensive. I'm going to keep going. But what I would say to the lady who said, come to Blackpool, I don't know who you are, fantastic, come and join us, help us arrange a coach to Blackpool, or, easy, go to Tame, Wantage, Didcot, etc. There's planting going on all around, and we collaborate with all our grassroots people. So we are part of a massive movement. Get on Twitter, follow Macclesfield, follow Mansfield. It's all happening. And the growth is happening there. It's not so much happening in Oxford. The growth in these groups is happening outside, in Wales, in Sunderland, everywhere. There's almost a new one every day. So if you're on Twitter, just follow them and you'll be impressed and pleased by how busy they are. All right? What I'd also like to ask you is to please put your money where your mouth is, or your actions. Please come and sign up. And if there is a people's vote, we're going to need warm people, even in Oxford. We still have 23% said, we still need to get our Remain vote out, the lazy Remainers who don't want to talk about it. They're all your friends, family. It may even be you. You may not bother to go to the referendum vote, I'm sure you would. But come and help us. Don't just tell us stuff. Don't just tell us to go places. Come and help us. So you can sign up over on our store and do that. Yes, lock the doors until you sign up. So I think, have I said anything? Oh yes, and we would like to say very positively, let's be positive. I know, I'm going to say it, thank you. Madalena has a wonderful poster. Madalena Kay. We also happen to have the Bollocks to Brexit bus coming to Oxford on Saturday morning. She has these beautiful leaflets. We have lots of them. Give them to your kids, give them to grandkids, give them to people because they're marvellous. Read them yourself, share them. They're really positive, really colourful, hundreds of reasons to remain. We've got masses of them, so please help us distribute them. We'd also like to talk about Joan's wonderful, what would you describe it as? Is it like a movement or a Facebook page, your reasons to remain? How would you describe it?
It's a resource campaign resource for all people who are campaigning for Remain. We've done about 1,500 posters, articles and videos completely free for Remain campaigners to use. I wish more would use them, and that's what we do. We put a post out every day.
Where's the website?
It's on Facebook.
Facebook.
Okay. We will publish it on our mail, Reasons to Remain, okay? So follow up, get some ideas, talk to people, keep talking to people, become as boring as we are, okay? And then we'll get